Shalom to everybody out there. All praises to the Most High, who's ahead of my life. Also to Christ. May the King rule and reign forever. Also, what up to my some boss out there. I'm praying for you, bro. And let me tag a few people that I think want to be tagged. Hold on for 1 second. Yeah, I don't know if I can tag the brother or not. Give me 1 second, y'all. Okay, I think I had him. Hold on. There we go. So I gotta tag a few people. Just want to tag a few people. And then I'm finna get ready to start. I know it looks like I'm idle right now, but I got one more person. Well, I think two more people to tag. Yeah, I actually got three more people to tag, and then I'll get ready to start my part. So let me just go and tag these three more people real fast. Okay, got them. Here we go. Tag this cat. I got a lady to tag, and then I'll be done. Because all these people are the ones that I have to address. So let me find it real fast. The last one I got to address. Here we go, right here. All right. I think that is everybody. Get him up. All right. So let me tell y'all what all that happened. So everybody know, my understanding is four predators, but on top of that, I'm a Masonic, right? So doing my deep research, I was noticing that it's a lot of passages that a lot of Masonics don't touch on dealing with Christ. Well, that being said, you got here? Okay, everybody. Well, how you doing, Miss Tiffany? How you doing? So that being said, it took I got a lot of heat from our Old Testament Israelite community, OT only, dealing with you got to know the language in order to understand the Bible. You got to know the original language. You got to know the Hebrew in order to understand the Old Testament. If you don't understand the Hebrew, you won't understand the Old Testament, and the New Testament by itself is false and it's fake. So I got a lot of heat from that. So now, I'll pull my Genesis 19:24 that shows you that it was two lords. The Lord from on the earth rained down fire and brimstone from the Lord out of heaven, showing two lords in the English. Well, we get a they go through, they try to parse the Hebrew and we go through the Hebraic linguistic guy, and they all went to, oh man, it's only one Lord. It's only one Lord, man. It's only one Lord. The Hebrew that we have, it only shows one Lord. So you're off. It ain't gonna be no two lords. You ain't got no Jesus Christ in the Old Testament, and etc. So me and the brother was talking. I think he believes in Christ, but he just don't believe the Christ that the New Testament speaks of. And he believes that you got to know the Hebrew and the Torah and all that stuff also. So what I got to defend now, because first of all, my original argument came from the anti-Nicene fathers, right? And it has a dialogue with Trypho the Judean, and it's between Justin Martyr and Trypho. This happened according to the way that they dated. It happened around the 2nd century, okay? So I'm going to show you why this is important in a minute throughout this broadcast. But this happened through the 2nd century. So we have an argument from a Christian who's saying that this same passage that I use in Genesis represented two lords. And they're trying to, and the response to it was, no. Hold on, that's my wife right there. But the response to it was, no, indeed, it was only one Lord. So now I'm thinking, well, why would Justin, about close to 2,000 years ago, who obviously knew the Hebrew and obviously knew the Greek, why would he bring up an argument about two lords if the linguistic part of it would only allow one Lord? He didn't know that. The Jews that he was arguing with, they did not know that. So now I had to embark, and I had to go, and I had to dig. So now me and the brother, he's 12 hours ahead of me. So we agreed to do a couple of videos going back and forth, just to help the time element, and he can talk and I can talk. We're going to do a few 30-minute videos, so hopefully I can be done in 30 minutes. But I'm going to bring out my information and what up, Mr. Tony? I'm going to bring out my information and all the things that I have came across dealing with the Bible. Now, I want everybody to know I'm a Messianic. I believe in Christ above all. And I'm not here to deter you from the Hebrew. I'm not here to deter you from the Torah. I'm just here to demonstrate facts. I'm going to demonstrate facts. Now, you can take it how you want it, but this is going to be facts. So, without further ado, let's get ready to start this. First of all, this is my, hold on, let me get it back up. This is my YouTube right here, Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler. AOSD CHANDLER. You see my logo. I only got 95 subscribers. I need 100 in order for me to update my YouTube channel. So 5 more people, please come on. But let me begin. We got hit that. Let me begin now my presentation. Christ and the Tanakh. Well, before we hit Christ and the Tanakh, there's a few things that we got to know. So today, this is going to be my objectives today. If I can get everything finished today, it'll be fantastic. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of this, but this is my objectives. I have 30 minutes to do this. I might go over 5 minutes, but let's see. My objective: show that importance was never put on language. 2, go into the history of the Masoretic text. 3, show how Jews of the antiquity changed text. 4, compare the Masoretic text with the Greek text. 5, explain how language changes. And 6, my conclusion. You see, it's a lot of things I got to do within 30 minutes. So let's start. So now, I got to show that importance was never put on language. So I'm just going to read what I have here. And I have here is about knowing the history first. The history shows the reason of languages and not the idea of making one superior to another. So once again, hold on, y'all. Once again, you got to know the history of the Bible before you even try to jump on languages, because if you do not know the story, you're going to be lost in sauce. So now let's go through the story of how languages began. So we have Genesis 11:6-9, King James Version Bible. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Hold on one second. Wait, is there any way you can pause for about 20 minutes or so? Okay. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to. Let us go down. So we have an us right there, right? That's important for my later presentations, but right here we have an us. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name, hold on, y'all. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So now, we have Jubilees 10 and 18. And I'm just going to read it. And the Lord our God said to us, so we got an us there once again, behold, it is one people that has commenced to do it. And now I shall not let go of them. Behold, I shall not let go of them. Behold, we will descend and mix their tongues, and one shall not hear the other, and they shall be scattered into cities and into nations, and one counsel shall no longer abide with them until the day of judgment. And the Lord descended, and we descended with him. So we have the Lord and we, which is polytheistic, not monotheistic. So we have poly right here, a group of beings in Israel's history. This is important later. But now, we descended with him to see the city and tower with the children, which the children of men were building. And he confounded all of the speech of their tongue, and they no longer heard the voice one of the other. And they ceased then to build the city and the tower. And I'm going to stop reading there. So I have right here, the language split separated the people from each other only. So now, the point of having different languages, according to the Bible and Jubilees, was to separate mankind from being wicked. They were being wicked, and they could achieve anything they wanted to because they had the same language. In fact, I will do that. But I'm going to have to jump back out of it right here. Sorry. Alright, so right here. So now, because they have the same exact language. So, the point, well, I mean, I'm going to keep going on, because you're saying what you say that it says, but I have not only the Masoretic, I have the Book of Jubilees. And the Book of Jubilees, we're going to go through that in just a second. So now, we have two different documents saying language was split due to mankind's ability to communicate with each other. So, the Most High did not put importance on one language. The reason why he introduced different languages was because of mankind. He separated mankind. He did not separate himself from his people. He separated mankind because of their actions of being able to communicate. So now, the book of Josephus. The book of Jubilees. Right here, just in case, this is what the big screen does. If I put it down, you actually can see more of it. So, among the 900 or so texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls is the book of Jubilees, originally written in Hebrew. Jubilees continues to interest scholars for its commentary on the early text. And then you can see right here, actually, let's make it bigger again. Let's see here, from current slide, you can see right here, the book of Jubilees did not have any vowel markers. It was all consonants, and that's going to be very important in the future of this presentation. But the book of Jubilees is a valid source. It actually predates the Masoretic. It's with the antiquity, the Jews of the antiquity. This is what they would have known. So, and this is a commentary pretty much on Genesis and some of the books of some of the other books of Moses. But we have history of the Jews, what they thought about languages being split up because of people being wicked. It had nothing to do with the Most High choosing one language over another language. Okay. So now, let's keep going. Can you cut that light back on? Alright, so now, show that importance was never put on language. See, now we have to do more. Too bad, no. So now we got to do more understanding, or we got to go dig deeper, because for some reason we stop with the American mindset, we stop with Western mindset, and we forget that there's other scholars out there that did work, and there was other Hebraic literature out there that goes past what we have here in America, and sometimes you got to read it. So now this is a little article from the Jewish Encyclopedia. You see I have it right there. It says the Word of God. Now I want y'all, for my people that says that, okay, it's all about the Hebrew language, right? It's all about learning Hebrew, and you got to know Hebrew, and if you don't know Hebrew, then you will be lost. So let's read with some of these Jewish people who this is all they do for a living, is find out the text and how to change the text around in order to benefit themselves. So now, the Word of God was pronounced on Mount Sinai in 70 languages. So, did anybody understand that? Did anybody get that? Okay, let me read it again. This is from their Mishrash, as well as their Talmud, which is all old ancient Hebraic literature also. So now, this is what they came up with when they had the Torah. Before any of these Americans got it in 1900s, this is what they came up with before when they had the Torah. And in fact, you see this was created in 1906. So this is a statement they created in 1906 about what happened in the antiquity. So now, the Word of God was pronounced on Mount Sinai in 70 languages. So for some reason, these Jewish people think that Moses received the laws in every language that he split mankind up into. He gave them 70 different tongues, which all was from him. So now, for some reason, they feel that Moses got the laws in all 70 languages. The Torah, I'm going to keep reading what they said. The Torah was written in 70 languages in order that the nations should not be able to plead ignorance as their excuse for rejecting it. Then you have the citation right there. You got the Tosef Satah 8. So you can research that. You can get you a Talmud and a Midrash and look that up yourself. Now, among the 70 languages, let me see here. Maybe it didn't go. Sorry, y'all. Let me see what's going on here. Yeah, we on the right thing. Maybe it's just slow. But now, among the 70 languages, the most noble is Hebrew, for in it was pronounced the creative word of God. So now, they're given significance. They're given they're giving praise to the Jewish law. To the Hebrew. They're giving praise to the Hebrew. So now, among the 70 languages is the most noble. The most noble is Hebrew. For in it was pronounced the creative word of God. The Jewish law required that every member of the Sanhedrin, the council that governed the Jews, especially in the southern kingdom, the Jewish law required that every member of the Sanhedrin should have sufficient knowledge of the 70 languages to be able to do without an interpreter. Then you got the Sanhedrin 17a. These are all sources, real sources that you can go to and read it for yourself. The scholarly world is not enough sources. It's too much opinion, not enough sources within my community. Too many opinionated people, not enough sources. So now, to know knowledge of the 70 languages to be able to do without an interpreter. So for some reason, these Hebrews understood the importance of learning all languages that the Most High separated mankind with. So now we have the elucidating, the Torah. But it is the 5th verse that we find a very unusual Hebrew expression. Once again, I did not create this stuff. This is the resource you can go to find it. I have it presented. Now, across the Jordan River on the eastern bank in the land of Moab, Moshe began elucidating. I think that's how you say it. Elucidating. Be'er. This Torah saying, Devarim 1:5. This is the first time the word Be'er, elucidate, explains, make clear, is used in the Torah in this way. The only other time it is used is in Devarim 27:8, where Moshe is commanded to write out a copy of the Torah on the stones of the altar to be built on Mount Ebal after they crossed the Jordan River and entered the land of Israel. And you shall write upon the stones all the words of this Torah very clearly. Be'er, I said, Hietziv. I guess that's how you say it. Now, Rashi explains that in both cases, the word Be'er, explain clearly or elucidate, means to explain it. Or in the second case, write it in 70 languages. So we have it right here that for some reason the Jews felt that when they read the Torah years ago in the antiquity, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when they read the Torah, for some reason they formulated the idea that the Most High gave Moses the Torah or the laws in 70 languages, and later on Moses had those same laws written in 70 languages. So, once again, Moses, if this is correct, right, if this is right, because I'm an English speaker, I really don't care about none of this stuff. I don't care how you pronounce the Hebrew. I don't care about none of it. But if we're going to be real scholarly, right, if we're going to worry about what the scholars say and not our everyday brother who picked up a YouTube channel and started reading and thinking that's what it is. If we're going to be scholarly, it says that they created the laws and wrote them in 70 languages. So it shows you that Moses himself was not worried about everything being in Hebrew. The point was to get the word out to everybody. Once again, the point was to get the word out to everybody. It was never ever meant for Hebrew. That's why you never find in the Bible, in order to understand the Bible, learn Hebrew. You never find the commandment say, well, read and write in Hebrew, or you don't ever find any of that. You only find my brothers and sisters in America or across the country living in the 21st century who try to put an impact or try to make you think it's all about the language, because I'm going to hit the original language later, but it's all about the language that they feel that since they took some classes, they have a better understanding of everybody or of the scripture than you do, because they know that what an aleph and a bet is. So it's just ridiculous to me, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. All right, so now we have, once again, I want to show that the importance was never put on language. I'm going to show you. See, now, once again, I have resources. I have credited resources and documents and sources to show you what I'm saying. So now, let's see where Josephus, who was a Jew, a priest, who lived about 2,000 years ago, who know way more about the ancient Hebrew and know way more about the law than anybody today living in the 21st century, no matter what anybody tried to tell you, we're going to use common sense. So now, this is what he said in the Antiquities of the Jews, Book 20, Chapter 12, Sections 262 through 264. I want y'all to see where this concentrating on the Hebrew language or the Hebraic language came from. And I am so bold as to say, now I have so completely perfected the work I propose to myself to do, that no other person, whether he were a Jew or a foreigner, had he ever so great an inclination to it, could so accurately deliver these accounts to the Greeks as is done in these books. For those of my own nation freely acknowledge that I far exceed them in the learning belonging to Jews. So he said the Israelites back then, especially the Jews, knew that he was smarter than all of them. That's what he's saying. I have also taken a great deal of pains to obtain learning the Greeks and understand the elements of the Greek language, although I have so long accustomed myself to speak our own tongue. So now he said he learned the Greek, but he was a Hebraic speaker. He spoke Hebrew. Now, that I cannot pronounce Greek with sufficient exactness for our, listen to what he says about the Jews, for our nation does not encourage those that learn the languages of many nations, and so adorn their discourses with the smoothness of their periods, because they look upon this sort of accomplishment as common, not only to all sorts of free men, but to as many of the servants as please to learn them. But they will give him the testimony of being a wise man, but they will give him the testimony of being a wise man who is fully acquainted with our laws and is able to interpret their meaning. So what Josephus just said was the Jews, the same Jews that got destroyed for being wicked, the same Jews that the Most High allowed to be destroyed during the feast day, the same one he allowed the Romans to come in and to take into captivity, those same ones was the people that were saying, don't learn other languages. It's common. We don't care about learning other languages. So they did not care about learning other languages. This is first century Jews. You know, the wicked generation. But now, he said, out his own writing here, those same Jews thought that a wise man would be those fully acquainted with the laws of Moses and is able to interpret their meaning. So now, even though a person could not speak Hebrew, the Jews 2,000 years ago looked at those people who could not speak Hebrew and said, if you are acquainted with our laws and interpret their meaning, then you are wise. So they didn't say if you can accompany with our laws and you can read our language, because they all read the language and did not know what the laws meant. So their understanding 2,000 years ago was still, it's all about understanding the meaning of the law, understanding the meaning of the instructions, and not reading the word for word without understanding. So now, they didn't even stress the language. They just didn't want their own Hebrew-speaking people to learn other languages. That's the point. So now, let's go to the history of the Masoretic text now. So now, let's go to the history of the Masoretic text. And let's jump off of here real fast. And my children are behind me, so y'all, my wife. But let me show y'all something here. So I got this right here. So when I'll be referring to, what is it called? Linus, let me see if I can find the name. The Leningrad Codex. The Leningrad Codex. It's going to be talking about this right here, right? This is going to be the oldest codex that we have dealing with the Hebrew or their Hebrew language. So this is going to be the oldest one that we have right here. So this is what I'm going to talk about right now. Who created this oldest text? Who created it? So we're going to go through that real fast. Trust me, this is the same text that they're reading, y'all. This is the same text that they're reading to you. This is the same text that tell you got to learn Hebrew to read this text. You got to learn it, because this text will show you the law. And if you don't know this text, if you can't read this text, then you don't know the law. So we're going to go through it and see exactly what it says. Let's find out the history behind it, because there's a lot of things our people don't do. We don't learn history. We just believe what people say and we're running with it. So now, the Masoretics, or the Masoretes. And you see I have the link right here. And if you need this copy of this PowerPoint, let me know and I'll just email it to you. So now, the works of the Masoretes, or the Masoretes, however you want to say it. The goal of the Masoretes was to guard and preserve the text of the Bible, which had been handed down from generation to generation. To achieve this goal, the Masoretes worked in several parallel directions, and in the end, they were highly successful. The Masoretes worked to determine the text of the Bible. They stated the proper, listen to what it says. They stated the proper way of writing and reading the Bible. And in passages where they found differences between texts and ways of reading, they issued a decision and ruled as to which opinion was correct. These Masoretes, who you're reading their information, this is what they created. They the ones that said what was and was not the right way to read the Torah. in the text. The same, these people that's telling you, learn Hebrew so you can learn this Masoretic, so you can know what the Bible says. Well, obviously you don't even know the history behind it. But I'm going to tell you the history. So let's keep reading. These decisions related not only to verses and words, but to every single letter. The Masoretes dealt extensively with questions of plan and defective spellings, and on the basis of old and reliable manuscripts, they decided how to write every single word in every place in the Bible. Now, this will be talking about the Torah and the Tanakh. Okay, now, in addition to determining the text, the Masoretes also dealt with inserting and vocalization and cantillation marks. And this, too, was an extremely important project whose contribution to the Hebrew language is inestimable. I think they said inestimable. I don't know. Now, the Masoretes sought to preserve the reading tradition of the Bible. They sought to preserve it now, which had been transmitted orally from generation to generation. So now, let's get what is being said. Let's get what's being said right here, right? Real fast. So now, they themselves took it upon themselves to create a Bible. So now, let's do the history. So now, Christianity has spread, okay? Christianity now has hit everywhere. The Septuagint was everywhere. Everybody, we have this, at this time, you have your Muslims, you have your Christianity, you have your Judaism, so you have it all right here together. But what's the point? Only one of them is talking about Christ. The other one is talking about Torah only. So now, you have oral tradition against documented records against other documented records. The only oral tradition right now was pretty much the Old Testament. So now, the only way people knew at this time about Torah and what the Torah taught was through the oldest text at this time, which was the Septuagint. The Greek Bible was the only text that they had that actually had the whole story written down and composed. Everything else was the Islam, they had their own little Bible, the Quran. But then you also have the oral tradition. So now you have these antichrist hating Jews who probably wasn't even real Jews, just converts who came in and they said, hey, let's take all of these oral words that we're hearing in our ear and let's write them down. We're going to write them down and we're going to change we're going to explain what it means. That's, in other words, we got all the oral tradition. They got little scrolls here. They got little scrolls there. But then with the destruction of Jerusalem, we know Rome came and they burnt up a whole lot of stuff, including all of the library and all that stuff. So now we have a lot more of oral than we have written down. So let's redo the oral. And we're going to say what it means. Okay, so now let's see what they did. To that end, they developed the vocalization signs, which help the reader to read the letters by indicating the vowels. Until the time of the Masoretes, there had been no vowel signs at all. Okay? So now, even when they get a scroll, the scroll has nothing but consonants. So what the Masoretes do, they say, okay, through oral tradition, I remember how this story goes. We're going to create a new way of reading and writing, and we're going to put vowel markers, indicators, on the letters, so the people who comes after us can finally read and understand what the Torah is saying. And y'all don't have a problem with that. Now I have a problem with that because I don't even have to speak Hebrew. I can use the concept of English. There's only so many letters that I can have, and if I create different vowels and two consonants, I can make one word say another word. So now, the Masoretes had the same. It's the same thing in Hebrew. I don't care what nobody says. You only have 22 consonants or something like that. So all you have to do is make this vowel go right there, and you change that vowel right there. Then all of a sudden the word says something totally different than what it said in the beginning, and I can show you that. But I know I'm running out of time. So now, let's keep going. Let's keep going. The ancient scrolls that were found in the Judean desert, like today's Torah scrolls, have no vowel signs. And in each verse, the reader must depend upon the oral tradition which teaches him how to read. Now, which one of you 21st century Americans know the oral tradition of the Jews about 2, 3, 4,000 years ago? Which one of you Americans really got that? Okay, so we're going to put all our faith on these Masoretes who we're going to read exactly what they did anyway. So now, the more history of the Masoretic text, read the complete Jewish Bible. Okay, now, original language text underlying the complete Jewish Bible and page really shows what happened when you switch vowels. Okay, now, the history of the Masoretic text. One of the most important projects of the Masoretes was the invention of vowel marks for the Hebrew language. Hebrew writing is mainly consonantal. So now, in the 11th century, this is when you start getting vowel markers. Okay, this Masoretic text that you keep trying to point to, and you tell me I gotta learn Hebrew in order to read that Masoretic text, while I have a Greek text which is about 1,000 years older than it, and it maybe this is why the disciples had the discourse they had in the Bible, because they actually understood the original Torah, and they actually had the original Greek to explain or to walk through. Now you come 1,000 years later with some random people who say, "Hey, we know what the Torah really means, so we're going to rewrite it down." And it's strange because it contradicts what the older texts say. Once again, it's strange that it contradicts. It's strange to y'all that y'all can open up the Hebrew, the Masoretic text, the Hebrew, and start reading and say, well, in Hebrew, that doesn't mean that. See, the English got it wrong. In Hebrew, that don't mean that. See, that ain't talking about Christ. That ain't talking about Christ right there. Well, why come people 2,000 years ago said it was talking about Christ? Why come your adapted, altered version makes it not be about Christ, but 2,000 years ago, it was about Christ? So I should not listen to you because you don't understand. You haven't even, your biasness, and you thinking that Rome means white people, and your prejudice and racism didn't change your mind, and you don't understand how to use logic anymore. So now, older always usually means better. But let's keep reading. It says, in 358, following another Jewish revolt known as the War against Gallus, the Roman emperor disbanded the Sanhedrin. Despite these persecutions, the sages worked on compiling the Talmud. So now you have the Talmud that comes before the Masoretic text. Even the Talmud that a lot of people know is evil, it came before the Masoretic text. So now, around 400, the Jerusalem Talmud was canonized in Tiberias. Now, this is going to be very important in just a second. In the latter half of the millennium, Tiberias, now under Muslim control, so now we have two different religions, two different religious sects, was the home of the Masoretes. Masorah means transmission. Scholars who were concerned with the accurate transmission of the biblical text. These grammarians also introduced the vowel notation system for Hebrew that is still used today. The Aleppo Codex, which can now be seen in the shrine of the book in Jerusalem, is credited to the greatest of the Masoretes, Aaron ben Asher. Now you tell me, is that an old Hebrew name? You tell me that now. But anyway, during his era, Tiberius was struck by several major earthquakes which devastated most of the city. So this is what we have here. We have the Talmud dominating in Tiberius, right? We have Muslims dominating in Tiberius. Then all of a sudden, you have a new Jewish sect that comes in the same area that has the Talmud and has the Muslims, and now they create a Torah, and they create pretty much the Tanakh, and we're gonna sit there and say, okay, well, these guys was not at all infiltrated by none of the Muslims or the Talmudians. They was actually by themselves, or the Talmudists. They was by themselves. They stuck by themselves. They was not influenced by society and all kind of stuff we're going to make up in order to make this information not accurate. So now, let's keep reading. A distinguished Masoretic who flourished in Tiberias in the first half of the 10th century. He was descended from the family of Masoretes, which can be traced back through 6 generations to Asher the Elder, who flourished in the last half of the 8th century, while merely the names of elder critics have been preserved. That of Aaron ben Moses is the first that appears in the full light of history. With him, the Masoretic may, in certain sense, be considered as close. He wrote a manuscript of the Old Testament and marked it with vowel signs and accents. Who told him to do that? Nobody, but he did it, and that's what you have today. But anyway, he spent many years of study in preparing this codex and revised it several times. I wonder why. I got to take the Messiah out of here. I got to take that Christian Christ out of here. I got to take that guy out of here. Let me revise that because this is the scriptures that they use in the Septuagint. Let me revise that because that points more to the Christ. Let me revise that. Okay, now it's more Jewish. Now it's no longer Christ. Now it became the standard for all generations, and with a few exceptions, where it follows his contemporary rival Ben Naphtali. The present Masoretic text is based off his works. The belief that this codex has been preserved in the synagogue at Aleppo is unfounded, and the opinion that Aaron ben Asher was a Karaite is untenable. He wrote such a treatise on Masoretic and grammatical subjects, which occur in several manuscripts under various titles. So now, my brother, I know that my 30 minutes is up. So I tell you here, you can cut it right here, my brother, and respond. Now, me personally, I'm going to finish my presentation, but you can cut it right here because we was only going 30 minutes. So, my brother, this is a perfect place for you to cut it and to respond. But for my other people, I'm just going to keep going on. Now, let's show how the Jews of the antiquity changed texts. So now, we have a person in history, a Christian in history, that said even thousands of years ago, before the Masoretic, about 600-700 years before the Masoretic text came and the Masoretes came and the Masoretes, he said that even back then, the Jews were changing the Torah around because, once again, remember I said that the scrolls got burnt up and stuff, but they still, every once in a while they had a different scroll here and there, thanks to the Septuagint. But they had a different scroll here and there. So now, let's go through some of the scrolls they had here and there and see what they was doing. I said, and this is trifold. the dialogue with Trypho. This was from Justin Martyr, and I don't adhere to a lot of stuff Justin Martyr said, especially dealing with the prophecy of the end time. But regular dialogues like this and breaking down scriptures like this, of course I will adhere to them. But let's just read some of the allegations he made. I said, I would do as you please. All right, this is 72. Section 72 under dialogue with Trypho. I said, I would do as you please. From the interpretations then which Ezra interpreted of the law about the Passover. So now you read in the Apocrypha how Ezra was supposed to rewrite the laws and stuff, rewrite pretty much the Tanakh. So we got that in Second Ezra. But now, when Ezra interpreted the law about the Passover, they have removed this. Now listen to what Justin said. For all my Torah-only people who do not believe in Christ, and all my people, you gotta learn, all the people who attack me for not knowing Hebrew and tell me I'm stupid and I would not know anything. I would be ignorant because I know Hebrew. Now, for my people out there who just want to learn Hebrew, go ahead, 100%. These are for the people that attack us. They like to attack me. So now, this is what Trypho said occurred thousands of years ago. So listen to what they took out. And Ezra said to the people. Hold on, let's see where I'm at. Let me see where I'm at, because I don't want to. I think my screen moving slow. Thousands of years ago. So listen to what they took out. And Ezra said to the people. Okay, hold on. My screen ain't moving. Hold on, my screen ain't moving. Let me move the screen. Let's see where I'm at. I think my screen is slow. Okay, yeah, hold on, y'all. I didn't know my screen wasn't moving. So, I read this one, and I'm just going to leave it on this. The sister asked me to make it bigger, but I'm just going to leave it on this right here. I think she left anyway. This is what I was reading about the Masoretic text, about the Talmud and all of that. I read it from this screen. Like I said, if you want this, I'll just email it to you. But now I'm on the next screen. I'm on this screen right here. So now I'm just going to leave it small so we can flow along, because I'm just talking. I didn't know it wasn't moving. So now, this is what it said. I said, I would do as you please from the interpretations then which Ezra interpreted of the law about the Passover. They, being the Jews, have removed this from their works. Now listen. And Ezra said to the people, this Passover is our Savior and our refuge. And if ye understand, and it come up unto your heart, that we are about to humble him on a cross. So now, imagine if the Jews would have left that inside of Scripture. Well, I know what some of y'all were saying. Y'all were trying to make that be about Hezekiah or Zephaniah. Y'all try to make that be about Josiah or one of them other kings. You probably make it be about Solomon or David. But for us Christians, imagine if he would have left, if the Jews would have left that sentence. That we are about to humble him on the cross. And afterwards, put our hope in him. Then this place will never be laid desolate, said the Lord of hosts. But if ye do not believe him, nor listen to his proclamation, ye shall be a laughing stock to the Gentiles. So that right there takes away, if they would have left that in there, that takes away the whole concept of of Israel only, because we know, why would the Gentiles be laughing to them? Well, the Gentiles will have Christ, and the Gentiles will see them laid desolate because they did not humble themselves, and they did not listen to Christ. So This right here stopped the whole Israel only thing. But you see why they take things out? Try to make it be centered around Israel. Try to make it be centered around the language. Try to take Christ right out of there. So now, verse 2. And from the word spoken by Jeremiah, they have cut away this. So now they cut Ezra. Now they cut from Jeremiah. I am as an innocent lamb carried out to be sacrificed. Against me did they think their thoughts, saying, come, let us cast wood into his bread, and destroy him out of the land of the living, and his name shall be no more remembered. And since this chapter, which is from the words of Jeremiah, is still written in some copies of those that are in the synagogues of the Jews, for they cut these things out only a short while ago. So it shows you that some of the synagogues still had rendering of the Tanakh. So the ones that got destroyed in Jerusalem, these would have been the originals, and now you see we have copies in here. And not all of them in Jerusalem was originals. You know, some of them was copies too, but we can go into the history of that later on if y'all all want to. But here, these will be copies because these will be after the destruction of the temple. But look at how important that this was and how they was trying to get rid of Christ. The Jews, even the converts, because most of these will be converts at this time, they were trying to get Christ out of the Tanakh early as the 2nd and 3rd century. They're trying to already get Christ out of the Tanakh as early as the 2nd and 3rd century. So now, let's look into the notes they said. And it says, and Ezra said to the people, this same passage, but in Latin, is attributed to Esdras and Lactantius. Or I guess that's another Esdras or something. Thinks it was in his hypothetical book of testimonies, and only omitted it from the Cyprian because it was not in the accepted book of Esdras. It seems to be entirely Christian in origin. So with the person who made the note in this book, that's just a note from a person today, or a recent person. This isn't a note created by Trifle, or sorry, or by Justin. So now, what they're saying is, well, no, he wasn't talking about Esdras in the Bible. He was talking about Esdras that lived over there. And the Esdras that lived over there, he took it out his works because it wasn't accepted. And from the way Justin said it, it's Christian in origin. Yeah, Justin was a Christian. And no, he wasn't talking about some guy named Esdras. He was talking about Esdras in the Bible, as you can tell. This is the flow of the conversation. So sometimes we got to read into what's going on because we don't like doing that either. But now, let's read another one. This is from the same document. This is 73. Again, from the 95th Psalms of the word spoken by David, they have removed this short saying, from the tree. For although the word was, tell it among the Gentiles, the Lord reigned from the tree. They left only, tell it among the Gentiles, the Lord reigned. So do you see what they would, at this time, Christian had already spread it, okay? Everybody, they wasn't worried. Now at this time, the nation was more worried about Christ and the gospel and following Christ over making the Jewish man the promised people. See, Jews had been promised, along with the converts, they had been the promised people for, 1,500 going on 2,000 years. So they always had a status of being the promised people. Well, when Jerusalem was destroyed 70 AD, and you get into the scriptures, the Greek, you have, well, truthfully, the real Jews were spiritual, not on the outside, but on the inside. And the new people, the new name I'm going to call my people by, is, in fact, Christians. And then second Ezra hit this point again. I'm going to uproot you Israels, you family of Israel, from your land and give it over to the nations. So all Christian views dealt with mankind, Israel and Jew and Gentile alike, being all one body in Christ. The Jews are not like that. The Jews wanted everything to be about them. Therefore, the best way to do it is, first, let's get rid of the leader. They started trying to take Christ out of everything. So now look how things would flow today if they would have just left it alone. But they didn't. They wanted to get rid of Christ. And today you have my brothers and sisters in the same mindset trying to get rid of Christ using a corrupted text. Using the text created by who knows what was on their mind or anything. We're just going to take their word for it, and we're going to not really care about the oral tradition no more. I mean, I would even tell you people, at least read some of the Talmud and the Midrash so you can actually understand how you got your Masoretic. At least do the research to understand it. But now, let's keep reading. It says, Trypho said, God alone knows, because now the Jews, Trypho was the Jew, and he was saying that, that sounds pretty much impossible what you're trying to allude that my people are doing. So let's see it. Trypho said, God alone knows whether, as you say, the rulers of the people deleted anything from the scriptures. But such a thing seems incredible. Yes, said I, it seems incredible, for it is more awful than the making of the golden calf which they made in the wilderness, when they were satiated with manna, and then sacrificing their children to demons, or then slaying the prophets themselves. But in truth, I said, you seem to me not even to have heard of the scriptures which I said they have mutilated. For these many passages already stated are more than sufficient to prove the subjects of our inquiry, together with those statements which are yet to be cited and are preserved among you. So right now, Trypho and Justin Martyr, it was a conversation between a Jew and a so-called Gentile, and they was right here talking about the deity of Christ. So what Justin was saying was, if your people if they would just left the text alone, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, because everybody would have known that Christ was who he said he was. But notice, Trypho never, see, this is before the Masoretic text. This is before a modern person. This is before an American. This is before their breakdown of scriptures. Notice that back then, Trypho never said, hey, Justin, you gotta read the Hebrew. You don't know Hebrew. You don't know the third person masculine. You don't know the Hippophile or all that other stuff. You don't know our sentence structure. You don't know grammar. Therefore, you don't understand what you're saying. Trypho never made that point. Why? Because they all had the same understanding. The point Trypho was trying to do was take Christ. He said, I know this guy did that. He died on the cross. He did this, he did that. But I need you to prove to me that he is the same person in the scripture. Prove to me that he's a deity. And for everybody out there, please read the whole conversation. Justin Martyr, a dialogue with Trypho. Please read it. It actually goes through the deity of Christ found in the Torah and the Tanakh. And trust me, the brothers and sisters I have talked to using the same information, they have no response except you got to know the Hebrew. You got to learn the Hebrew. If you know the Hebrew, you won't be saying that. Well, why come Trypho didn't say that? Because Trypho had the real understanding. He actually knew the more updated version of the scripture compared to the corruption we had today. So he was able to formulate that, okay, this guy is saying truth, but I need it broke down more. But now, listen, and it says right here, the following passage is plainly Christian. Once again, it's all Christian. And it's not found in the book of Jeremiah, which is true, because he said they took it out. But anyway, Irenaeus quoted always in the Latin portion of his work as from Isaiah, Jeremiah 4, and blah, 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 this and that. But what this is showing you two different people is quoting this same work, saying that at one time it was in the Jewish scriptures. We got two different people that lived at two different times, at two different points in the history, saying, hey, or, around this, I'm going to go in and actually see exactly when they lived, but I'm pretty sure it was two different times, because Irenaeus actually quoted from Trypho. But anyway, he's saying that these people both understand that the Jewish people removed certain words out of their scriptures trying to get rid of Christ. Now, this was before Masoretic text. So now we're trying to say that these people came thousands of years later with the same oral tradition that was, obviously you see that some of it already had taken Christ out of it, because this is like, what, 2nd and 3rd century, and you're talking about 11th century. So if these are the same words being passed down orally, that means they are not getting the full story. They don't have the understanding that the people that predated them had. They are teaching a different gospel. This is what happens when we use logic and understanding of history from researching and reading. So even if they was getting the oral tradition passed down to them, you can see right here, hundreds of years before it happened, the oral tradition was already being corrupted by those Jews that hated Christ. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And for my people about Trypho, I just got a little information. The dating of the composition of the dialogue is also problematic. There is a reference to a war, presumably the Bar Kokhba revolt, and I'm pretty sure that was converts in that, of 133 through 135 CE. But there is an indication that the text could not be earlier than 155 CE, the date of the first apology, which the dialogue refers to. So now you have 155, 133, all, 2nd century. But now, the first apology was dated 153, 155, and Justin's death, 165 CE, which attested in Tatian, Irenaeus, and Eusebius. Given these factors, it is difficult to be sure of the date of composition of the complete dialogue. So now, this was a peer-reviewed paper. But now, I can say this, though. All of these dates is before the Masoretic text. Okay? All of these is before 900 and 1000. So this is still predating by 800 years. So now it says, in the latest issue, and the brother that I'm talking to, he actually brought this up to me now. In the latest issue of the Oxyrhydicus Papyri, a series, 78, Egyptian Exploration Society. B. Henry offers the edition of Papyrus Oxy 5129, Justin Martyr's First Apology, which is the earliest Greek manuscript of the text of Justin Martyr, according to Henry. This is the first published ancient copy of the work of Justin Martyr. The text is otherwise known from the unreliable manuscript. He dates it to be the 4th century CE. Henry dates the hand to be the 4th century CE, citing that is incredible discovery since the P. Oxy 5129 predates the earliest manuscript of Justin by a millennium. There are few variants in the fragment that make the text important for a text critical study of Justin's first apology. So now they're just showing you that Justin, his work actually comes from copies of copies. It comes from copies of copies. So this was important for them to find, to say, okay, at least You know, we know the Justin guy, he really existed and he really wrote something. But now, the point of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy is the words inside of the copy is used to predate it. So now you have like what they did. This is how they predated it. First, they saw the reference to the war, and then we'll have Justin. You have Justin's death, and etc. So they just use a process of elimination to find out when exactly the manuscript was wrote. So it's all before the Masoretic text. That's the point that I'm trying to get at. So now, we're going to look at what is called text change. So now, and this shows how text changes. So now, professor at Bible, now, this guy is a professor of Bible at Jerusalem's Hebrew University. Okay, so he's a professor, okay? He went to school for this. And he teaches this. Okay, now, an editor-in-chief of the Dead Sea Scrolls publication project wrote. So now he has credentials, okay? Maybe he knows what he's talking about. Okay, so now, all of the textual witnesses of the Old Testament differ from each other to a greater or lesser extent. There does not exist any one edition of the Old Testament which agrees in all of its details with another. Most of the texts, ancient and modern, which have been transmitted from one generation to the next, have been corrupted in one way or another. Emphasis in original. A second phenomenon pertains to corrections and changes inserted in the biblical text. Such tampering with the text is evidenced in all textual witnesses. Therefore, paradoxically, the Sophorim scribes and the Masoretes carefully preserved a text that was already corrupted. One of the postulates of biblical research is that the text preserved in the various representatives, manuscripts, editions of what is commonly called the Masoretic text does not reflect the original text of the biblical books in many details. This is very important for my people. Learn the Hebrew. If you don't learn the Hebrew, you'll never understand what the law. Okay, well maybe you don't understand either because you're reading the corrupted part of the Hebrew. I mean, you're reading it's corrupted. You're reading it now. What you do is you try to go to older works in order to find out more understanding. Now you're going to get older like Septuagint or the Alexandria Codex and all of them, as well as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Because the Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of that was found in Aramaic as well as Hebrew without the vowels. So you can find a lot of that information back then if you want to actually parallel. But the Masoretic itself, with my vowel points, corrupted. But now, one of the postulates of biblical research is the text preserved. Oh, sorry, I read that. These parallel sources from Kings, Isaiah, Psalms, and Samuel. Psalms is very important because Psalms is all, Christ is all in Psalms, according to the Greek, are based on ancient texts which already differed from each other before they were incorporated into the biblical books, and which underwent changes after they were transmitted from one generation to the next as part of the biblical books. So these books had already been changed and was being changed throughout the generations. Now, this is not my words. This is the professor of Bible at Jerusalem's Hebrew University. He's the editor-in-chief of the Dead Sea Scrolls also. So you can argue with him, okay? Argue with that guy. But now, it says, because now, you know, I like the Septuagint, so it don't stop talking noise now. It says some stuff about the Septuagint too now. Septuagint is a Jewish translation which was made mainly in Alexandria. Its Hebrew source, let me see where I'm at. Its Hebrew source differ greatly from the other textual witnesses, the Masoretic, the Targums, the Samaritans, and the Vulgate, and many of the Quorum, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls text. Moreover, Septuagint is important as a source for early exegesis. So even though it differed, in order for the way that you understand the Bible, the Septuagint is important for the way that you understand the Bible. From the Old to the New, the Septuagint is important in the way you understand, exegete, the way you understand the Bible. And this translation also forms the basis for many elements in the New Testament. The importance of the Septuagint is based on the fact that it reflects a greater variety of important variants than all the other translations put together. So, more than the Masoretic, more than the Targums, more than the Samaritan, more than the Vulgate, more than the Quran, all of them put together, the Septuagint has a greater variety of importance. Now, this is not my words. This is that professor's words. So now, like I said, argue with him. So now let's keep reading. Let's text change, and this is where you can find it. You can Google this: errors in the Masoretics, original Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible. Working in Tiberias during the Middle Ages, the Masoretes recognized the possibility of human error when copying the Hebrew Bible. They tried to combat it by adding supplements to the text. In the margins of the Masoretic manuscripts, there are innumerable notes, Masoretic, to safeguard the text. The precision with which the Masoretes were able to preserve the Hebrew text beginning in the 17th century, in the 7th century, is astounding. Nevertheless, the Masoretes were not working with the original Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible. Corruptions had already crept into the versions they copied. The Masoretes' efforts preserved the biblical text in the first millennium CE. Modern scholarship, with critical editions of the Bible like Biblica Hebraica Quinta, is bringing us even closer to reconstructing the original Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible. So now, let's go to the Masoretic text versus the Greek text. Now, so now, let's read the Masoretic versus the Greek in Deuteronomy 32, 7 through 8. So now, let me show you how slick these translators were when they did the Bible. Let me show you how slick. You see how they just take out a little word here and add a little word there, and it can change the whole doctrine of the Bible. Let's read what the Masoretic says in Deuteronomy 32, 7 through 8. And I'm going to read it in English. This is a corrupted text. Anywho, so I'm going to read it what it says in English, and maybe one of you linguistic scholars can tell me what it says in Hebrew, and tell me if it says these three words, because that's all I really care about, the last words. Now, remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee thy elders, and they will tell thee. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. So now, you see right here, this put the importance on Israel, right here. Let's put the importance on Israel. So now we know that even in the beginning, even in Genesis, when we read the nations were separated and etc., they was actually separated, according to the Masoretic, with the future people, the future nation of Israel. So this puts a lot of importance on Israel because the Most High was thinking about Israel all the way back then. But now let's read it in the Septuagint. Let's read what the Septuagint says. Yeah, go ahead, baby. Remember the days of old, consider the years for past ages. Ask thy father, and he shall relate to thee, thine elders, and they shall tell thee. When the Most High divided the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he sets the bounds of the nations according to the number of the angels of God. According to the number of the angels of God. So now, you see you see how the importance left from the angels and the heavenlies and the angelic realm to the children of Israel? You see how the Masoretic, you see they didn't change too much. If you can read it from the Greek into the Masoretic, you see they didn't change too much. But what they did change, it makes a big difference. Because now you have the angelic realm, you have more of the heavenlies, you have more of the spiritual, you have more of the polytheistic realm. I hope I said that right. I hope I didn't butcher it. They say I was the best English speaker. But you have more of the polytheistic realm, dealing with more than one belief in more than one God, belief in several deities and etc. More dealing with the angelic realm. This is pretty much, and this goes hand in hand to what the religion they brought out of Canaan, believing in more than one God. But anyway, you have the angels of God here, and then you got the children of Israel there. So, this shows you how precisely just flipping around a few words can actually be very important to a doctrine. Very important to a doctrine. This takes the attention off of Israel and put it on God. This takes the attention off of Israel and put it on the nations, on all the nations. Here you got the sons of Adam, bounds being set according to Israel. Then you have the son of Adam and the bounds of the nations be according to the angels of God. So now you have the people relying on the angelic. You have the people relying on the heavenlies compared to the people relying on Israel. Simple. Now this is for my deep people. This is easy how they do it. You see how they do it? You see how easy they just snuck that in there? 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years before the Masoretic, they was all about the angels, all about God, all about Christ, all about that deity. Masoretic come around, that was all about Israel. Masoretic, Israel. Let's get Israel back. Israel. The Christians, man, the Christians over, they did away with Israel. They did away with it. They made everybody spiritual Israel. It's all about Christ. It's all about that. I don't like that. I like being important. Let's change. Let's add a few vowel points. let's do a few vowel points here and there and see what it says now. And now this is another Septuagint for the Masoretic. And then it shows you how close the Septuagint and the Masoretic is until it comes to certain parts. And then they want to get off and act like, for some reason, now their pen starts slipping. They start adding extra vowel points, and now they created a whole different doctrine on their own. So look at the Septuagint and the Masoretic right here. Look, in the beginning, God made the heaven and earth. Masoretic. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. The old Jews and the Christians would have known more about the Septuagint than the Masoretic. But anyway, verse 2. But the earth was unsightly and unfurnished, and darkness was over the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the water. 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. Verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. It's Masoretic, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So you see how close they are until certain points. This don't seem a little odd to you all? For my scholars out there, for my real research, not the people, I'm Israel, pro-Israel, I don't like Greek, all that stuff. For my people out there who really want to know the truth, ain't it odd how it's so similar in certain parts, but when it's time to get dealing with the nations and Christ and all that stuff, now all of a sudden words are deleted and now it says something else that wasn't originally there, and all that is weird. And I'm sorry, I go with truth over what I think or what is popular in 2019. But now, I'm about ready to conclude this thing. So now we're going to see how language changes. It says, biblical or classical Hebrew was an ancient language that first emerged in the 10th century BC. Over the next few centuries, and I have that, this come from a Hebrew podcast lesson for the beginning questions dealing with Hebrew. Okay, now, the ancient Hebrew people used it to communicate and to make a record of their history, religion, philosophy, poetry, and culture. A portion of this literary record formed the basis for Hebrew scriptures and also what came to be called the Bible. During the Roman period, the language evolved beyond recognition, and later fell out of use in daily life, but it lived on in religious context. Hebrew experienced a revival in the late 19th century as part of the larger Zionist movement. You might want to research Zionists. Okay, but now, thanks to the efforts of Elazar ben Yehuda, these are all converts, who prepared the first modern Hebrew dictionary, people started using Hebrew again to communicate with one another as they went about their lives. But because of the influence of European languages, Hebrew changed. Grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, not a single aspect of the language went untouched by the transformation. And like any other modern language, Hebrew continues to change. So now, ancient Hebrew, also known as classical or biblical Hebrew, differs notably, though not drastically, from modern Hebrew. The differences are mainly in the areas of grammar, phonology, and vocabulary. And speakers of modern Hebrew can typically read an ancient text without difficulty. So now, you can read the text with the vowels in it without difficulties. But the point is, the grammar is different, the phonology is different, and the vocabulary is different. So you're reading the words, but everything, the structure and everything else is different. In other words, you know the foundation without knowing the elements that's used in order to create the foundation. This form comprises a number of dialects spoken in ancient Israel between the 10th century BCE and the early 4th century CE. In the modern era, it is mostly a literary and liturgical language only. Modern Hebrew, the national language of modern-day Israel, is a secular spoken language. So now I'm just going to give you the definitions of what changed. You know, the differences are grammar, phonology, and vocabulary. But let's just break down what those mean. Grammar, the study of the way words are used to make a sentence or to make sentences. So now, the way you formulate a sentence would be a little different from the classical Hebrew. We know that, right? But you're trying to use the Masoretic way and try to formulate and use those rules of sentence makings and etc. on the Masoretic text, which is true. I can't take it from you. You've been 100% accurate on the way you're formulating and the way you're doing it. 100% accurate. Much props and respect. But you're just doing it on a corrupted text. Okay? So your understanding is 100%. I agree with you. That's your understanding. I agree with you. But it's not what the ancient Jews understood. So now, phonology, the science of speech sounds, including especially the history and theory of sound changes in a language or in two or more related languages. So in other words, the way that the words are pronounced and etc., it changes a little bit. Like and all that stuff. Now, vocabulary, the body of words used in a particular language. So pretty much all things used in order to formulate a sentence and an understanding changed. The words, you can read the words without understanding the application. And I say that all the time. So now, let's look at my conclusion. Arguing the meaning of text that has been altered is pointless, especially if the person that altered the text is biased. The only way to see the true meaning of ancient understanding is through the eyes of the ancients, and not just taking their word for it, but also studying it. I know I probably don't have the true, thorough understanding, but I am learning and trying to get it. I also use history to lead me. So now, and I know I went over I went well over my 30 minutes. I'm an hour over my 30 minutes. And I said earlier in the brother, stop at the 30-minute mark. That's where you're supposed to stop. But for everybody else, they could have kept going on. But this was the point. This was the point that I'm trying to get at. This. Trypho. When he was arguing against a Jew, that Jew did not have this. He did not have this understanding. Okay? Trypho, when Justin was arguing against Trypho is the Jew, I always say that. I always get that back. When Justin was arguing against the Jew Trypho did not have the Masoretic. Okay? He did not have this understanding. The same book y'all trying to use and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. They did not have that. Okay? So, before you try to say Trypho don't know what he's talking about, and before you try to come with all these modern grammatical breakdowns and understand that it was a whole different world and understanding that Trypho and Justin had compared to what we have in 2019. You can't use a 2019 understanding to break down what Trypho and Justin was arguing about. Trypho never corrected Justin's grammatical errors, never questioned his ideology behind scriptures, saying that he got it wrong because he don't understand the Hebrew. He never did that. The conversation never happened like that. The conversation always happened with prove this and prove that through the text. So now, you can use Josephus. He pretty much debunks all of the mess that y'all say also. But, I missed something. I'm sorry that I missed it. I got to bring it out. I'm sorry. I have a complete Jewish study Bible. Okay? I'm going to read the introduction, and I don't know why I didn't put that. I thought I put that. I did put it on there. That's what those letters was. When I said read the complete Jewish study Bible, and I skipped right over it. Okay, so now it is 38. Let me go to 38. I was wondering why I put that on there. So now, let me read it. 38. And it says, Hebrew Aramaic text used for the Tanakh. And it's just a little reading. I'm going to read it though. Except for the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are more than 2,000 years old, the oldest extant Hebrew and Aramaic manuscripts of the Tanakh date back to the 9th and 11th centuries CE. The Tanakh was written originally with only consonants, and thus the Torah scrolls read today in the synagogue contain only consonants. In the 6th to 9th centuries, a group of scribes called the Masoretes, the word comes from the Hebrew Masoretic, which means tradition, developed a system of notation for recording the vowels traditionally used when reading the consonantal text of the Tanakh. Without these, the consonants of most Hebrew words could be pronounced in several ways and given several meanings. So now, even the person who created this understood, because this is what they had in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that if you get a document full of consonants, you can make it say anything you want it to say if you personally add the vowels. If you put vowels anywhere you want to, the scripture, the text can say whatever you want it to say. But he gives examples. So now, for example, if English was written only with consonants, how would you pronounce ST? Would it be sat, set, sit, sot, so S-A-T, S-E-T, S-I-T, S-O-T, sate, S-A-T-E, seat, S-E-A-T, sight, S-I-T-E, soot, S-O-O-T, or suit, S-U-I-T. So with consonants, if you don't know the oral tradition behind it, you don't know nothing it says. So once you start putting your own vowels in there, you can make it pretty much say anything. This is what he's saying. But now, from context, how would you know? But there developed a need to making the meanings crystal clear as Hebrew fell into disuse and not all contexts were understood. So the Masoretes recorded the traditional vowel pointings, as they are called today, and printed editions of the Tanakh. All have them. Moreover, Hebrew is taught using them, and while a modern Israeli reads his paper without vowel pointings, a new immigrant to Israel learns how to pronounce Hebrew with their aid. Moreover, they continue to be used in published editions of Hebrew poetry and in the Jewish prayer books. In addition, the Masoretes codified a system of punctuation, also included in printed editions of the Tanakh. These cantillation marks are used when the Torah is chanted in the synagogue. But their more important use is to clarify which words of the text go together. For example, in a passage familiar to Christians as well as Jews, because the New Testament makes use of it, Isaiah 43, a voice cries out, "Clear a road through the desert for Adonai the Lord." But at Matthew 3:3, many translations have something such as, "A voice cries out in the desert, clear a road for Adonai." However, the cantillation marks show that "in the desert" tells about the road, not the voice. The Masoretes modified the written text, Katev, pronounced Katev, in a number of places. so that what is read aloud in the synagogue, that's for them. From a Jewish religious point of view, the Masoretic operations embodied in the curve are not only permitted changes to receive written. Hold on. Give me one sec. Give me one sec. Sorry about that, y'all. So now, all right. But Christians and reading consonantal texts. But Christians and non-Orthodox Jewish scholars are not constrained by this restriction. Thus, they apply the criteria of historical and linguistic scholarship to the Masoretic text in determining its reliability. Moreover, from ancient versions such as the Greek Septuagint, so now they're telling you that this is ancient to the Masoretic, the Greek Septuagint before the Masoretic, they can infer the existence of alternative underlying Hebrew text, vowel pointing, or punctuation. Here is a well-known instance of how significant this can be. Now, I want y'all to listen to this example. In Psalm 22, verse 17 of Jewish versions read, that would be, like a lion at my hands and feet. So now, I know y'all done went through this. I know us Messianics went through this. Hey, it can't be talking about Christ because in the Hebrew it says lions. So what are you talking about piercing? So now listen. While the corresponding verse 16 of Christian versions, Septuagint, says, they pierced my hands and feet. If this passage prophesies Yeshua's crucifixion, as Messianic Jews and Christians believe it does, then the prophecy is certainly clearer in the Christian versions, since the Brit Hadashah reports that Yeshua's hands and feet were nailed at the execution stake, as the Christian Jewish Bible, the complete Jewish Bible calls the cross. But it says nothing about lions at my hands and feet. How can two such different meanings arise from the same text? They don't. The texts are different. The Masoretic text has the Hebrew word kara, K-A-R-I, like a lion, while the Christian versions make use of the Septuagint, which is an older 1,000 years before this came about, 1,000 years before the Masoretic say, hey, let me make my own vowels and change the words to mean whatever I want them to mean. So 1,000 years before this came, this had this right here. Implies an underlying Hebrew text, which the word karu, they pierced. The difference is the presence in the Masoretic Hebrew of the letter Aleph and the letter Yod instead of Vav are both easily explainable as scribal errors in one direction or the other. So in other words, they're trying to say the scribes got this wrong. Now, I'm pretty sure that's not what happened. But I'm just drawing my conclusion, but I'm sure they said, let's take Christ out the Bible, and this is exactly what happened. So now, you see what happens when they make the vowel instead of K-A-R-U. Remember, there was no vowels. It would just been a K-R. And they changed it to K-A-R-I. Once again, only consonants in oral tradition. The Masoretes, the Masoretes, the Masoretes, they get a hold of it, of all these consonants, and they put the vowels wherever they wanted the vowels to go. Then all of a sudden, you, instead of having the oral tradition and the Septuagint way, thousands of years, 1,000 years before this understanding even came about, they all understood, hey, they pierced my head and feet. This is found in Psalms. This is found in the book of David, the poetry. So this is about our Savior in Christ. 1,000 years later, they changed the vowel points. All of a sudden, no, that's not about Christ. That says a lion. What are y'all talking about piercing hands and feet? That's really about a lion. That ain't got nothing to do with Christ. You see how easy it is once if you go through history, you actually understand what's going on. Just read a little. But if you don't, you're stuck, Chuck, and all of a sudden you have this fake understanding. So now, this is what it says. In this case, as virtual all cases, the complete Jewish Bible adheres to the Masoretic text, but a footnote gives the alternative rendering and refers to this paragraph of the introduction. There are hundreds of similar differences, although few are important for Messianic understanding of the Bible. In general, I have not indicated where the differences are because this is outside the scope of my purposes in preparing the complete Jewish Bible. The scholars also use other early versions, Jerome's Latin Vulgate, 430 CE, which is also before the Masoretic, the Syriac Targums, Jonathan, which I got one coming in, and other datings from the 5th century CE or earlier, which is all before the Masoretic. These offer still more readings and add to the possibilities and to the confusion. Scholars frequently find historical, archaeological, literary, theological, and logical justifications for inbending the text itself. That is, correcting it to what they believe it must have originally said. It may well be that the scholars often approach the Hebrew originals more closely than the Masoretic text does. However, my choosing to render the Jewish Tanakh obligates me to use the Masoretic text. Very rarely do I deviate from it. Even the God says that. I know it's problems with the Masoretic. And I know the Septuagint teaches something totally different. And I know that back then, the Jews in the 1st century and in the 1st century BC, the 1st century AD, the 2nd century BC, the 2nd century AD, and following, I knew they had more of the understanding of this. And I knew that, that's why they was always arguing that Christ really is found in the Bible, and the Jews had a problem with it. I understand the argument there. But now, you come in 2019 and you try to present the same arguments, and it's easy to find out if the texts have been or have not been corrupted. I mean, y'all see what I did? It's easy to find out if the texts have or have not been corrupted. So now you're arguing for no reason. You use racism and prejudice because you say, that's written under the Romans, Greeks. We're Hebrews. We need to learn the Hebrew. Nobody had that argument. Okay? Nobody. They knew the Most High created all the languages. They knew all languages evolved. They knew this. Nobody had that argument. It's people that's full of pride and hatred, from what I see, my experiences, is coming with this argument. So now, where it all started, and I also got to Seifert here. I got to Seifert here, and boy, didn't he do some crazy stuff too. No, I mean, didn't he not tear it up too? But just to give everybody the rundown of what's going on, and I'm going to read these and I'm going to finish it. Just to give everybody the rundown of what's going on. The Christian era had already flourished, right? Christ had already did what he said. Jerusalem has been destroyed. You have Christians everywhere. The Hebrew is leaving. People are not really worried about the Torah. The Christians have their own Bible. They have something which we know is something similar to the Septuagint. Now we know the Septuagint this is not the original Septuagint, but we know we know, but they still coined it, the teaching or the book Septuagint. But the Christians did not. Once again, the Christians did not use the Hebrew. They used the Aramaic and they used the Greek. They used the Aramaic and the Greek. Now, their Bible had more books than the original Hebrews. The Hebrews pretty much stopped with the prophets. We, the Christians, this is why the Catholic Church today have the Apocrypha in it. Because we use the Apocrypha as well as these books. And we also use Enoch. We also use Jubilees. We had an old version of Jasher, not the Jasher you have now. We use the Apocrypha, the Christian literature. I already said that. Some use Second Baruch. Some use all of these books that they say is non-canonical. The book of Adam and Eve, and etc. All of these ones they say is non-canonical. We have these books because we all had the understanding that Christ was the Messiah. So our book and our understanding differed from the Jewish man. The Jewish guy, I'm talking about after Christianity, the Jews who stuck with the laws and Torah and Moses, they only had this. Their understanding was this. So, in the beginning we had, from Christians to Jews, we had two different Bibles anyway. We had two different Bibles. The point is, when Christian kept flourishing, everybody was going more to the Greek text in the Aramaic. Period. It was going more to these languages because these is where the original Torah was translated from. I mean, so they translated their Torah from the original Torah. More ancient manuscripts. It didn't have to be the original. It was more ancient manuscripts where it was only consonants, and they knew the they knew the oral Torah, so they was able to translate it into the Greek language, and this is why you have Christ and the disciples quoting from the Greek. You can find their quotes in the Septuagint, and this is why also, if you're just a King James Version person, once you read Christ and the disciples make quotes, and you go into the Old Testament, and you say, well, it says something around it, but it says it differently. It's because you're reading two different translations. You're going from the Greek to the Masoretic instead of from Greek to Greek. So it's easier to go to one part of Greek to another kind of Greek. And that's what I do. Greek, the Septuagint, New Testament, or even the Aramaic, it goes together. It flows way better than Greek to Masoretic, Greek to Hebrew. So now, the point is, they're trying to put a stop to the spread of Christianity. They want to feel important. They understand that as long as people think that they were the chosen people, they get some type of privilege. It was nothing about spirituality of the Most High. You have the same thing going on today. So, Septuagint is where I go. That's my argument. And now, where it all began, Trifo made this argument, and I'm going to say it out of the Masoretic English. I'm not going to read the Hebrew. That's something y'all want to argue about. The linguistics and how the sentence is arranged. So I'm going to read it out of the Septuagint, proving. So I'm going to read it out the Masoretic first, because Trifo argument was there's two deities inside of the Torah. One of them has to be the Father. The other one has to be Christ. Genesis 19 and 24. It says, I'm reading 23 and 24. And the sun rose upon the earth and light entered Zoar. The Lord reigned upon Sodom and Gomorrah, suffering fire from the Lord out of heaven. Now they done broke down the plenty of linguistics and broke down and said you got to have different verbs, and that's not saying two lords, that's saying one Lord. Well, let's go to the Greek, which is 1,000 years before this. So let's see what the Greek says. Same verse, Genesis 19 and 24. Let's see what it says here. Genesis 19 and 24. Start at 23. The sun was risen upon the earth. Hold on. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Sodom. And the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. So now, are you trying to say that the Greek has the same sentence formation as the Hebrew, but the Hebrew means one thing and the Greek means something else? Where do we go now? If this is your argument, where do we go? Well, we go to the oldest text. So this is why Trypho was able to use this same Greek text and say, there's two lords right here. So you can't come thousands of years later with a corrupted text and say, well, it's only one Lord. Once you go through the sentence structure, the sentence only points to one Lord. Grammar. If you go through grammar, the grammar only points to one Lord. Well, in the older version, it points to two lords. And it's the same exact sentence. So, Trypho knew it was two lords. Sorry, I keep saying Trypho, I keep messing up with Justin. Justin knew it was two lords. Trypho the Jew knew it was two lords. So how can you come with your 21st century modern breakdown and say it's only one Lord? The grammar won't allow it. It's only one Lord. And then, let me show you how the Most High works. The Most High, even though they messed and corrupted it up and stuff, the Most High then comes and have it still translated the correct way in English. I mean, that's the Most High. That's how he works. So even thousands of years ago, Justin brought it up. About 2,000 years ago. Justin brought it up. Trypho never said nothing about grammar. In the Septuagint, what we have today, a modern Septuagint, it says the same thing. So the old Septuagint said it, the modern Septuagint said it. The Masoretic, thousands of years later, at least 1,000 years later, 800, let's give it 800 years later. Now you're saying it says something different. But then the English comes right back around it and creates and sets it right back up and make it say the same thing it said in the Septuagint, same thing it said in the ancient Septuagint, which is the same point that Justin made about 2,000 years ago. So this is how my God works. So I'm done with that. This is just, I'm sorry, it was only supposed to be 30 minutes. I went to 2 hours. You can stop at the 30-minute mark and respond to that. This is just for the people who wanted to hear more about it. So, you gotta read the Hebrew in order to understand it. You can read the Hebrew. You can read the Hebrew. You can have a fantastic time with it, and you can feel real powerful when reading the Hebrew. I'm just gonna stick to my English, my Septuagint. I got plenty of study Bibles, plenty of commentaries. Surely everybody didn't get it wrong, and you got it right. So, I'm done with it. That's my start off. This is my first beginning. I just want to go through the history of the Masoretic compared to the Septuagint. And we know the Septuagint got problems too. But if we want to talk about older texts, the Septuagint will win. So now, I'm done with this. Now my next goal, my next video, I'm going to prove that Israel always had more than one God. Okay? I'm going to prove that the Deuteronomists and all of those editors that was for pro-Israel came in the Hebrew and started changing text around in order to make it monotheistic later on But all of the ancient Tanakh living Israel always knew there was more than one God. I think they called it pantheon and stuff like that. I'm going to prove that first in my next video. And then the video after that, I'm going to start proving Christ inside of the Torah and the Tanakh. I'm going to this is we got to do it in sections. First, I got to tell you why your Masoretic says what it says. We done with that. So now I got to go through the history to show you that Israel always had more than one God. So why come it can't be Christ? If it ain't Christ, who is it? Who is this other God if it ain't Christ? So now, we're going to go through that next video. And then after that video, we're going to go into Scripture and show you Christ in the Torah and the Tanakh as a God, as a deity. So, this is what we do. This is Elvin Israel. Let me go back. If you have not signed on to my YouTube channel, AOSD CHANDLER, 95 subscribers. I need 100 in order to personalize my YouTube channel. Please listen in. Now, also, my mentor, Mr. William Bell, he will be on tomorrow. Y'all listen on to him. Like I said, I got this PowerPoint. If you want it, hit me up, send me a DM with your email address. I send it to you. But thank you all for listening. 2 hours down. I think I made my point. Love you all. I have no reason. And just look at the comments, y'all. My Masoretic, Hebrew only people, I don't know why they can't carry themselves spiritually. But just look at the comments. And then hopefully we can say, hey, brothers and sisters, let's revamp, let's do better, let's love each other, and let's produce the correct understanding. That's all I want to do. So, thank you all for listening in. I'd like to say a hearty shalom, shalom, and may Christ reign as prophesied.